My name is Lena, and I used to believe that marriage was forever. I believed love could survive anything, distance, disappointment, even betrayal. But that was before I discovered what my husband, Daniel, was truly capable of. I still remember the day I said the word divorce out loud for the first time. He laughed. He actually laughed, as if my pain was some kind of joke. But he didn't know what I knew. He didn't know that his secret, his dirty, life-shattering secret, was about to turn his whole world upside down. Daniel and I met 10 years ago in Chicago. I was working as a junior architect. He was already making a name for himself in real estate. He had that magnetic confidence, the kind that made you feel like you were standing next to someone who could conquer the world. He made me laugh. He made me feel safe. And before I knew it, we were married. For years, everything seemed perfect. We bought a beautiful house in the suburbs, traveled when we could, and talked about having kids someday. But someday never came. Somewhere along the way, Daniel changed. He became colder, distant, and obsessed with work. At first, I blamed myself. Maybe I wasn't supportive enough. Maybe I was too demanding. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. It started small. Late night calls, business trips that didn't add up, a cologne scent that wasn't his. One night, around 1 a.m., his phone buzzed on the nightstand while he was in the shower. I never snooped before, but something in me broke that night. The message preview froze me. Can't wait to see you again, baby. Same hotel? I didn't recognize the number. My hands trembled as I clicked it open, heart pounding like a drum. The chat history was full of messages, intimate, dirty, and recent, and pictures. My husband, the man who once swore he'd never lie to me, was cheating. When he came out of the shower, humming, towel around his waist, I just stared at him. He looked at me, puzzled. What's wrong? I held up the phone. You tell me. For a moment, his confident smirk disappeared. Then he recovered, rolled his eyes, and said, "Oh, Lena, come on. Don't tell me you're reading my messages now. That's sad." Sad. I choked. You've been cheating on me. He laughed, a low, mocking laugh that made my stomach twist. It's just harmless fun, he said, shrugging. You're overreacting. Harmless fun. I could barely breathe. You told her you love her. He smirked, pulling on a t-shirt. You know how women are. They like hearing things. It doesn't mean anything. I wanted to scream, cry, hit him, anything, but I stood frozen. That's when he said something I'll never forget. You'll never leave me, Lena. You love me too much. He walked past me, kissed my forehead like nothing happened, and went to bed. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room staring at the darkness until the first light of dawn crept in through the blinds. I knew then, this wasn't just infidelity. This was arrogance. A man so sure of my loyalty that he believed he could break me and I'd still stay. The next morning, I tried to act normal. I made him breakfast, asked about his meetings, smiled through the pain. He didn't notice a thing. That's when I decided I wouldn't confront him again. Not yet. Instead, I'd find out everything. Over the next few weeks, I became an actress in my own life. While Daniel kissed me goodbye each morning, I secretly tracked his phone location, took note of his business trips, and even followed him once, staying 2 cars behind. It led me to a small hotel downtown. I watched from my car as he walked in, wearing his conference suit. 30 minutes later, a woman arrived. She was young, maybe mid-20s, long brunette hair, designer clothes. Definitely not someone struggling. They hugged, and I saw him kiss her like he used to kiss me. That image burned itself into my mind. That night, when he came home, I didn't say a word. I just kept collecting evidence, receipts, photos, even recordings. Every piece of proof was a weapon, and I was building my arsenal quietly, until one Friday evening, something strange happened. Daniel came home early, grinning. I booked a weekend getaway for us, he said. We need this. You've been tense lately. Tense? My blood boiled, but I played along. We drove to a lake house 2 hours away, the same one where we'd spent our honeymoon. He poured me wine, made dinner, and acted like the perfect husband again. For a moment, I almost believed him. Almost. That night, after he fell asleep, I stepped out onto the porch. The lake was silent, stars reflected in the black water. I whispered to myself, I want a divorce. The words felt both terrifying and liberating. The next morning, I said it out loud to him. Daniel, I want a divorce. He froze for a second, then smiled. That smug, infuriating smile. He laughed. Divorce? You're kidding, right? I stared at him. Do I look like I'm kidding? He leaned back in his chair, swirling his coffee. You don't have the guts, Lena. You wouldn't last a week without me. Something inside me snapped. You think this is a game? You think I don't know about your little affair? He laughed again. Which one? I swear, for a moment, my heart stopped beating. He saw the shock on my face and grinned wider. Oh, don't look so dramatic. I'm just being honest. It's nothing serious. You're the wife. You've got the title. They're just distractions. That was the moment I knew. Daniel didn't just betray me. He enjoyed it. He thought he could keep living two lives forever, confident I'd never leave. But what he didn't know was that his secret wasn't just about cheating. It was darker, bigger. And I had already started to uncover it, because the woman he was seeing wasn't just some random fling. She was someone I knew, someone who could destroy everything. And when I found out who she really was, I realized Daniel's betrayal was only the beginning. When I finally discovered who she was, I felt the air leave my lungs. Her name was Ava Reynolds. Not only did I know her, I had introduced her to Daniel myself. Ava was a real estate photographer who'd worked with my husband's firm for years. Sweet, polite, and charming. She'd even come to our house for dinner once. I remembered how she complimented our home, how Daniel insisted on showing her every corner. Back then, I thought it was innocent. Now I realized he'd been flirting with her right in front of me. And the worst part? Ava wasn't just a fling. I found messages where she talked about our future, about how Daniel promised to leave his wife. He told her the same lies he once told me. But there was something else, something that didn't make sense. In one of the messages, Ava mentioned a loan. Don't forget the money you owe me. You promised to transfer it by Friday. I'm not stupid, Daniel. Money? What loan? The more I read, the more confused I became. Ava didn't sound like a helpless mistress. She sounded angry, desperate, and dangerous. That was the moment I realized Daniel's secret wasn't just about an affair. It was about something much deeper. I decided to meet Ava. I texted her from a different number, pretending to be a potential client looking for real estate photography. She agreed to meet at a cafe downtown. When I arrived, she was sitting near the window, stirring her coffee nervously. She looked exhausted, dark circles, messy hair, a shadow of the confident woman I once knew. Hi, Ava, I said softly as I approached. Her eyes widened. Lena? What are you doing here? I think you already know, I said, sitting down across from her. For a few seconds, she didn't speak. Then she sighed. He told me you'd find out eventually. Then maybe you can tell me what he's been hiding, I said, my voice trembling. She hesitated, looking around before leaning closer. I didn't plan for this to happen, she said quietly. Daniel said you two were practically over. He told me he was filing for divorce. Of course he did, I muttered bitterly. He's been lying to both of us. But then she said something that made my blood run cold. I lent him money, Lena. A lot of it. Over $50,000. What? She nodded. He said his company was in trouble. And he didn't want to worry you. He promised to pay me back in a month. I stared at her in disbelief. Daniel's business is fine. He just bought a new car. Ava's face crumpled. He told me it was for us, that he'd sell it later and give me my money back once we started our life together. For a moment, I was too stunned to speak. Daniel, my successful, arrogant husband, had taken money from another woman? Why didn't you go to the police? I finally asked. I couldn't, she said, tears forming, because I was stupid enough to trust him. There's no proof of the loan. It was all cash. That's when she pulled something from her purse. A flash drive. This is all I have, she said. Texts, photos, everything. He said if I ever tried to expose him, he'd ruin my career. I stared at it, my fingers trembling as I took it. He's not the man you think he is, Ava whispered. He's hiding something else. Something big. Before I could ask what she meant, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it and went pale. It's him, she said. He knows I'm talking to you. She grabbed her bag and ran out of the cafe, leaving me frozen in place. That night, I couldn't sleep. I waited until Daniel was snoring beside me before I plugged the flash drive into my laptop. There were dozens of files, screenshots, pictures, even voice memos. One audio file made my stomach drop. It was Daniel's voice. Don't ever contact me at work again. You'll get your money when I get it. Not before. You should have known what you were getting into. Then Ava's voice, trembling. You promised. I promise a lot of things, he snapped. Now keep your mouth shut, or you'll regret it. I covered my mouth with my hand, shaking. This wasn't the charming husband everyone saw. This was a manipulative liar who used people like chess pieces. But the last folder, that's what changed everything. It was labeled private, DONOT open. Inside were scanned documents, contracts, financial reports, and one name that stood out, Harrison Realty Holdings, Daniel's company. But something was off. The document showed multiple accounts, false invoices, and fake signatures, including mine. My heart raced. He was embezzling money, and he'd forged my name to do it. I confronted him the next morning. I stood by the kitchen counter, the printed documents spread out like a crime scene. When Daniel walked in, still half asleep, I said coldly, "You want to explain these?" He froze. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. "Where did you get that?" he demanded. "So it's true," I said. "You stole money from your own company. You forged my signature." He ran a hand through his hair. "Lena, you don't understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly," I snapped. "You cheated on me, you lied, and now you're stealing." He slammed his hand on the counter. "Keep your voice down." "I should call the police," I said, shaking. "You could go to jail." His eyes darkened. "If you ever say a word about this, I'll make sure you regret it. Are you threatening me now?" "No," he said with a cold smirk. "Just reminding you that your name is on those papers too. You'll go down with me." My chest tightened. "You forged my name." "Prove it," he said quietly. For a moment, we just stared at each other. The man I once loved had turned into someone I didn't recognize. Then he smiled, slow, cruel, confident. "You won't leave me, Lena. You can't." He walked out of the room, leaving me trembling with rage and fear. But as I stared down at those documents, I made a silent promise. He might think he held all the power, but I wasn't the same naive woman anymore. I was done playing the victim, and I wasn't going to the police. Not yet. I was going to destroy him myself, but before I could make my move, someone else did. And what happened next turned my revenge into a nightmare I never saw coming. I had a plan. It wasn't poetic or noble, just cold, efficient, precise. Gather proof. Expose him. Take back my life. Destroy him on my terms. But life has a way of rewriting even the best laid plans. And someone else, someone with more to lose than I did, moved first. It started the night I decided to burn my bridges. I printed copies of the forged invoices, bank statements, and the scanning of my signature. I made duplicates of every voice memo, every text message. I hid a stash in a locker downtown under a false name and another copy inside the false bottom of an old jewelry box in my closet. If Daniel tried to destroy one set, another set would survive. I felt like a general stocking supplies before the siege. That night, I placed the flash drive, Ava's flash drive, back into my handbag. I told myself I'd get to the police the next morning. I'd be careful. I'd build an unassailable case. I would not be the hysterical woman with a grudge. I would be a woman who finally did the right thing. At 2:14 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. The text was a single line. "You should stop. You're in over your head." My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I typed back, "Who is this?" No reply. I shrugged it off as a scare tactic and went to bed. Morning came with sunlight and a foolish optimism. I dressed, made coffee, and sat down at the kitchen table to map out my steps. I had two options: go to the police with concrete evidence, or confront Daniel again and force him to sign a confession. I was leaning toward the police, safer, cleaner. Then the knock came. Not loud, just 3 polite raps on the front door. I opened it to see 2 uniformed officers standing on my porch. One of them held a notebook. The other had that look I had seen 100 times on television. The look that meant something terrible had happened. "Bress, Carter?" the taller officer asked. "We need to ask you a few questions. It's about Ava Reynolds." My stomach dropped so fast I had to steady myself with the door frame. "What about Ava?" I managed. The officer's eyes were gentle but firm. "Her body was found early this morning in an alley off 5th. She was pronounced dead at the scene." I heard a sound, like someone tearing a page from all the plans I'd made. Dead? The word was foreign in my mouth. "That can't." "We are very sorry, ma'am." The officer glanced at his partner. "We need to ask about your relationship with Ms. Reynolds. Were you in contact with her recently?" I thought of the cafe, the flash drive, the way she'd left mid-conversation. I thought of the messages where she pleaded for money and threatened to expose him. "Yes," I admitted. "We met yesterday." They asked the routine questions, and I answered them. My voice as strangers. Where had I been the night before? At home. Had I spoken to Daniel? Yes. Had I threatened Ava? No. Did I ever receive money from her? No. Did I have any reason to hurt her? No. God, no. They left with promises to call. I stood in the doorway until they were out of sight, then collapsed onto the floor. My whole body shook. Ava, alive one day, gone the next. I ran to my laptop and pulled up the files. The flash drive sat in my bag like an accusation. When I plugged it in, my heart slammed into my ribs. It was empty. Every folder, every file, gone. The drive showed nothing. I sat back, stunned. I had hidden copies. The locker, the jewelry box. I checked them both. The copies weren't there. The locker was empty. The jewelry box had been rifled through, the false bottom pulled out and tossed aside. Panic is a peculiar thing. It makes you stupid and brilliant at the same time. I called Daniel. It went straight to voicemail. I called Ava's number. It went unanswered. I called the police back and begged for updates, but they told me to be patient, as if patience would bring a dead woman back. Later that afternoon, the detective finally called. "Immerse. Carter, there's something else. We found a receipt from a motel logged to your husband's company last week, and surveillance shows a car registered to your address near the alley the night Ms. Reynolds died." My throat closed. "That car was mine. My husband uses it for work sometimes." "Is that so?" The detective's voice was neutral. Can you tell me if you were home between midnight and 3 a.m. last night? I was. I was asleep, but the weakness in my voice betrayed me. I wished I had an alibi I could prove, a neighbor, a camera, anything. That evening, the news channels picked up the story. Local real estate photographer found dead. Ties to prominent developer under investigation. My face felt overexposed, like a photograph developed too long. A neighbor knocked and said, "Are you okay?" I saw on TV. I forced a smile and closed the door. Then Daniel came home. He walked in with that practiced slouch, palms open as if to say, "See, I'm harmless." He hugged me and then stepped back, his expression blank. I heard. I said, "Where were you last night?" He looked startled. What a question. At the office. I worked late. Can anyone confirm that? I asked. He met my eyes, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something that wasn't arrogance, fear. But he masked it quickly with anger. "You're being paranoid," he snapped. "You're playing with fire, Lena. You were the last person to see Ava alive. The police might want to talk to you longer." "You're saying I'm a suspect," I said, voice rising. "I'm saying you need to stay calm." He pulled me into the kitchen as if shielding me from the storm. His hands were cold. "Don't talk to anyone. Let me handle it." His words were both leash and poison. He sounded like a protector, but underneath was a threat. Let him handle it. Let him control the narrative, just like he always did. That night, while he feigned concern, I scoured our house for anything I could use. I checked the security camera footage. Someone had disabled our front porch cam at 11:58 p.m. I checked the home office. Files were missing. My printed copies? Gone. The locker? Clean. The jewelry box? And then my phone buzzed. A new message from an unknown number. A photo popped up. A picture of Ava's lifeless face, cruel and clinical. Underneath, a single line. "Stop digging, Lena. Or next time, it'll be your face in the photo." I dropped my phone. The world tilted. I felt sick, hot and cold at once. Someone was watching me. Someone knew exactly how close I was to unraveling everything. I wanted to run to the police. I wanted to scream, to show them the messages, the conversations, the threats. But who would believe I'd been threatened when the evidence had vanished and the circumstantial signs pointed at me? Daniel's help was suddenly the only thing keeping me from being cornered. He kissed my forehead that night and whispered, "We'll get through this." His lips were a lie wrapped in silk. I had to make a choice: trust the man who betrayed me, or trust the instincts that told me he was capable of anything. Before I could decide, there was a knock at the door. 2 detectives. Their presence felt like an executioner's shadow. One of them spoke, flat and unyielding. "MRS. Carter, we have some questions about your whereabouts last night. We also found something the victim had. A recent message thread with your number. Care to explain?" My heart felt like it had stopped, and then the room tilted into chaos. As they read the messages aloud, messages I never sent, I realized with a cold, absolute certainty that someone had not only stolen my evidence, they were framing me. When the detectives started reading those messages aloud, I felt my entire world tilt on its axis. "You ruined everything, Ava. Meet me tonight, or I'll make sure you never ruin me again. Don't make me do something we'll both regret." They said those words came from my number. I'd never sent them. "I didn't write those," I said, my voice trembling. "That's not me." The lead detective, a middle-aged man with sharp eyes, just sighed. "MRS. Carter, they came from your phone." The timestamps matched the night of the murder. Daniel stood in the corner of the room, arms crossed, pretending to be calm, but I could see the faintest smile tugging at his lips. He was enjoying this. The second detective handed me a printed report. "We're not accusing you yet," she said, "but the evidence looks bad. Ava's last messages were with you. We're just asking you to stay in town and cooperate. I nodded numbly, staring at the floor. They left me with a card, and the moment the door closed, my body collapsed into a silent scream. I turned to Daniel. You did this. He raised an eyebrow. Do what, exactly? Those messages. You faked them. You set me up. He laughed, low and cruel. Lena, if I wanted to set you up, trust me, I'd do a better job. You really think I have time to play hacker while the police are all over me? Then who? I demanded. He shrugged. Maybe Ava had enemies. Or maybe you're not as innocent as you think. He said it so casually, like tossing gasoline on a fire. I wanted to claw that smugness off his face, but I knew better. Losing control was exactly what he wanted, so I played along. Fine, I said. If you want to pretend you're innocent, go ahead. But I'm going to clear my name, Daniel. Even if it means taking you down with me. He leaned closer, whispering, You won't, because you know what happens if you try. I stared into his eyes, cold, gray, reptilian, and realized something chilling. He wasn't scared of being caught. He was confident, too confident. That's when I knew. He'd already cleaned up every loose end. For the next 2 days, I barely slept. Every sound outside made me flinch. Every phone call made my pulse race. I went through every possible way Daniel could have forged those messages. He had access to my phone plenty of times. He could have cloned it, used a spoofing app, or even sent those texts from another device using my number. He was smart enough, ruthless enough. But why go so far? Why risk murder, framing, and exposure? Then it hit me. Ava's loan. $50,000 in unrecorded cash. If she started demanding it back, she could have destroyed him. Maybe she threatened to expose his embezzlement. Maybe he silenced her before she could. But if that was true, what was his plan for me? I decided to find out. I started digging again, quietly this time. I used a friend's laptop, borrowed Wi-Fi from a cafe, and searched for any trace of Harrison Realty's hidden accounts. It took hours, but I found something strange. A shell company registered under the name L&A Investments. The initials stopped me cold. L for Lena. A for Ava. I clicked through, and there it was. Transactions linking Daniel to both of us. Bank transfers, invoices, withdrawals. It was all there. He wasn't just stealing money. He was funneling it through our names. If Ava went to the police, both of us would have been implicated. And now that she was gone, I was the only one left. That night, I confronted him again. I waited until after dinner, when he was relaxed, sipping whiskey by the fireplace. Nice setup you've got, I said coldly. L&A Investments? Clever touch. His eyes flicked up from his glass, and for the first time, the mask cracked. I don't know what you're talking about, he said flatly. Oh, you do, I whispered. You used my name, Daniel. You forged my signature, opened fake accounts, and laundered money through both of us. And when Ava found out, you killed her. He smiled faintly. That's quite an imagination, Lena. I've got proof, I lied. That wiped the smile right off his face. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he leaned back and said quietly, You shouldn't have gone looking. I had to, I said, because you took everything from me. He got up, slowly, setting his glass down. His movements were calm, deliberate, terrifying. Do you know what happens to people who dig too deep? He asked softly. They disappear. I took a step back. Are you threatening me again? He tilted his head. No, just stating facts. The silence stretched between us, thick and poisonous. Then he smiled again. Go ahead, Lena. Take your little proof to the police. See how fast they arrest you. You're already on their radar. And every document, Every transfer, every file points to you. I made sure of it. I froze. You? What? I told you, he said, voice low and measured. You shouldn't have pushed me. He turned and walked away, leaving me standing there, trembling, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. I didn't sleep that night. I packed a small bag, grabbed my passport, and hid a burner phone in my coat. I wasn't running, but I needed space to think, to plan. By morning, the decision was made. I was going to expose him, but not through the police. They'd never believe me now. I was going to go public. I called my old college friend, Sophie, who worked as a journalist for an online investigative news outlet. When she heard my story, she was skeptical, until I mentioned Ava's death. Send me whatever you have, she said. I sent her screenshots, account names, and a few recovered files from my cloud backup. Within hours, she called back, her voice shaking. Lena, this is bad. Those accounts, there's more than you think. He's been laundering millions. Not just company money, government contracts, offshore transfers. You need to get out of that house. Now. But before I could respond, I heard it. Footsteps. Daniel was home early. I froze, whispering, Sophie, I have to go. I hung up, shoving my phone into my pocket, just as he entered the room. He studied me for a moment, eyes narrowed. Who were you talking to? No one, I said quickly. He smiled thinly. You're lying again, Lena. I can always tell. He reached into his jacket and pulled out my phone. Funny, he said. You left this unlocked. He swiped the screen, his eyes flicking across messages, and his expression hardened. Sophie, huh? He said quietly. That's cute. You always did like pretending to be brave. I stepped back, heart hammering. Daniel, please, just listen. He cut me off with a raised hand. You don't understand what you've done. I understand perfectly, I whispered. You're going to pay for everything. He smiled again, slow, deliberate, terrifying. Maybe, but not before you do. And then he pulled something from his jacket pocket. A small, black flash drive. He held it up, glinting under the light. Recognize this? He asked softly. This is the real one, Lena. The one that could save you or destroy you. My blood turned to ice. Before I could move, he tossed it into the fireplace. The plastic hissed and melted as flames swallowed the only proof I had left. As the flash drive burned, Daniel whispered the words that made my blood run cold. You should have let Ava die alone. Now you're next. The fireplace's glow still stitched orange into my eyes from where Daniel had tossed the flash drive. I had watched plastic melt into nothing, and with it, the last slender thread that tied me to proof I could hold. For a terrifying second, I believed I was finished. Then I remembered Sophie's voice on the phone, the urgency in her words, and the fact that I had not been as careful as Daniel thought. He'd underestimated one thing. I had already sent pieces of the story out. I'd sent files to Sophie. I'd saved copies to a cloud she could access. I had planted evidence in places he hadn't thought to check. And more importantly, I had something he'd never expect me to use. A weapon he couldn't forge away. I'm going to the station, I said quietly, meeting his eyes. I'm going to show them everything. He laughed, the sound sharp and brittle. You? To the police? Good luck convincing them you're the victim. You're the only one with motive. Not if I'm honest, I said. Not if I go public. He stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Go public. That's your plan. You'll bury us both. Maybe, I admitted, but better buried with the truth than living as your puppet. He leaned forward, whispering, You'll ruin us. You'll ruin yourself. I left before he could react. I drove with reckless focus. No packing, no goodbyes. Just the burner phone in my hand and a folder of half-truths and threats in my heart. Sophie met me outside the cafe, eyes dark with adrenaline. We are going to live stream this, she said without preamble. I've got an editor, a tech guy, and a secure server. We'll air everything. The bank trails, the forged documents, Ava's messages, the threats. But we need a smoking gun, something indisputable. I opened my bag and took out my passport, my burner phone, and the one thing I'd been saving like a talisman, a small recorder I'd slipped into Daniel's study weeks ago. He'd always left his office door open, always been confident no one would cross him. In his arrogance, he'd never checked his own desk. The recorder had captured hours, phone calls, arguments, the voice memos where he'd chastised Ava, where he'd spoken about making problems disappear. Sophie's fingers shook as she pressed play. Daniel's voice filled the tiny cafe, calm and filthy. We can't have her going to the police. Not now. If she moves, we move first. Understand me? Quiet problem, quiet solution. Sophie's editor confirmed. That's good. Very good. His voice was all business. We'll go live in 30 minutes. You ready to tell your story on camera? I felt like I'd been standing on the rim of a cliff. Below, exposure. Above, safety. Maybe. I nodded. We set it up in a small studio with 2 cameras. Sophie introduced me as a scorned wife with evidence. I introduced myself as Lena Carter. No more pretense. No more performance. I told the camera everything. The affair, the loans, Ava, the forged signature, the threats, the police, the burn drive. People waiting on Sophie's site clicked through. The viewer count climbed. 10,000, 20,000, 50,000. Halfway through, Sophie cued the audio. The recorder's file played. Daniel's voice, distinct, arrogant, incriminating, filled the stream. The chat exploded. My hands trembled, but I kept talking. I read aloud the transactions, the shell companies, the names he'd used. Sophie displayed the bank trails that linked Harrison Realty to offshore accounts and to L&A investments. The response was volcanic. Minutes after we went live, my phone lit up with messages from strangers, from old friends, from the detective who had doubted me. "We're here," he typed. "Don't leave the studio." Another message. "We have an arrest warrant." The camera kept rolling. Across town, in a small office where Daniel never expected to be watched. He watched the live stream with a face that drained of color. He grabbed his keys and bolted for the door. But he was too late. Detectives who had finally taken the gravity of the evidence seriously were already moving. They had a warrant, paperwork that would make him answer for Ava's death, and for the ledgers that showed decades of theft. When officers pounded on our front door, Daniel's composure dissolved. He stared at the squad cars through the window, mortified, terrified, exposed. The sound of uniforms at his threshold thundered through him like a verdict. He turned to me, rage and disbelief twisting his features. "You set me up," he spat. "No," I said, and for the first time I felt the shape of victory in my hands. "You set yourself up." They handcuffed him. He didn't resist. He walked past me, his eyes blazing with hatred, and as the detectives led him out, he leaned toward me and hissed, "You think this is over? You have no idea who you messed with." They loaded him into the back of the car. Spectators whispered. News vans arrived. Flashbulbs popped like distant gunfire. I stood on the curb, Sophie at my side. The recorder's audio now evidence in the hands of the DA. The arrest was not the end of it. The DA called it a major breakthrough, an indictment on embezzlement, fraud, and suspicious ties to Ava's death. The national coverage made our little town a spectacle. People who'd once toasted to Daniel's success now turned their faces away. Some neighbors left gifts and notes. Others posted venomous comments online suggesting I'd manipulated Sophie for attention. But even under the glare of public vindication, something gnawed at me. Daniel had not been acting alone. The transfers pointed to shadow accounts tied to developers, to contractors, to political donors. The trail led somewhere much larger than our marriage. Whoever benefited from Harrison Realty's schemes had power, power that could move the police, silence journalists, and break people. 1 week after his arrest, I walked into the DA's office with a list of names. I wanted them on the record. I demanded subpoenas for offshore accounts, for emails, for travel logs. The DA nodded, exhausted but willing. "We have enough to hold him," he said. "If you can help us connect these accounts, we can follow the money." I thought the hard part was over when he was in cuffs. I was wrong. The hard part had only just begun. 2 days later, on a late Thursday, I returned home to find an envelope slid under my door. No return address, no stamp, just a single Polaroid photograph and a note scribbled in block letters. The photo showed Ava, alive, hugging someone whose face I couldn't quite make out. The caption on the back read, "You took my choice. I'll take yours." My hands went cold. I stood there, the world tightening into a needle of fear. I called Sophie. No answer. I called the DA. Straight to voicemail. I picked up the burner phone and dialed the number that had once summoned threats. It was disconnected. I heard a noise behind me, footsteps on the porch. I spun, heart pounding, and there, framed in my doorway, was a man I had never seen before. He was ordinary in every way. Nondescript coat, face obscured by a cap. He smiled too wide, showing too many teeth. "You made a lot of enemies, Lena," he said, his voice as casual as small talk. "Who are you?" I demanded. He clicked something in his hand, like a remote. "Call this a courtesy visit." He stepped forward, and in his palm was a tiny, familiar object. A flash drive, black as the night. "You thought burning that would end things," he said, voice low and amused. "But some things have copies." My breath hitched. "What do you want?" My voice was small and steady at once. He smiled. "Just a conversation. About loyalty. About debts. About choices." He leaned in, close enough that I could smell the cheap cologne. "You've started a war, Lena. Congratulations." I reached instinctively for the door, then remembered the Polaroid in my hand. Ava's smiling face watching me like a ghost. I realized I had stepped into a world far more dangerous than a ruined marriage. A world where money bought silence and secrets bought life. Outside, a siren wailed, distant, then closer. For a moment, I thought it might be help. The man's expression changed in a fraction of a second. Annoyance, then calculation. He shoved the flash drive toward me. "Enjoy your victory while it lasts," he said. Then, before I could answer, my phone buzzed. The screen lit up with a single name I hadn't expected to see. The caller ID read one word, unknown.